Good morning, and let me add my welcome to the AI Summit Silicon Valley for 2020. We are meeting here today with an amazing lineup of speakers, great opportunities to network, and learning more about the latest state of the art in AI. My name is Tim Ensor, and I'm going to be your host for today's sessions, taking you through that great lineup of speakers. I work in the team at Cambridge Consultants, and our role is to help clients to innovate, to create new to the world technologies and services and experiences. And the aim of that is very much to allow them to be the leaders in their markets. Now, my personal interest is working with business leaders to help them do that in the area of artificial intelligence. Now, it's a great time to be talking about artificial intelligence. AI is very much changing the way we're interacting with the world. It's allowing machines to start doing things we have really never thought possible. And of course, because of that, it's starting to create winners and losers in many markets. So a great time to be getting together to think about these issues. But I think at this time, more than any, it's probably right that we take stock and reflect on where are we, where have we come to, and where are we going? Now, I think the first thing to say is that this is a virtual event. Mostly we're at home joining this, and over the last several months, I think we've all become familiar with scenes like this, juggling and integrating work and life, probably in a way that many of us haven't had to do before. I've certainly become a fan of the opportunity to meet the kids and the families of my colleagues and clients as we're on video conferences for a lot of the day. It's also probably worth saying that we owe a great thanks to the AI Summit team in bringing the great experiences of the physical event into this virtual context. And of course, we have the same great opportunities that were presented by the physical events. We have the same great lineup of speakers. We have the same amazing opportunities to network with one another. And there are the same opportunities to meet and speak with the exhibitors who we have through the platform, who are able to explain how they can help move us all forwards on our journey in AI. So as well as being a virtual event, of course, I don't think we can go much further before we realize that we are also in the midst of a greatest upheaval in a generation. So this is the image of the Zuckerberg Hospital in downtown San Francisco, where the event was hosted physically last year in the Palace of Fine Arts. And right now, the officials in San Francisco are starting the process of setting up a temporary medical facility right across the street from where we met physically for the AI Summit last year. So it has been clearly a tragic period with great loss of life and significant upheaval to our daily lives. For our part, Cambridge Consultants has worked very intensively early on in the pandemic to help the UK government to develop a new ventilator to ensure that healthcare professionals around the world would always be able to give us the best care. And in 6 weeks, our team worked flat out round the clock and were able to produce from a blank sheet of paper a fully functional, fully tested, regulatory approved ventilator to give those healthcare professionals the tools they needed. Now, we're very thankful that that hasn't been needed yet. But I think during this period, we've seen many teams do extraordinary things to help the world keep going and look after those who are most vulnerable. So I suspect that over the rest of today, we'll hear most of our speakers comment on how the COVID pandemic has impacted them and their teams and their customers. So we'll hear much more about that, I have no doubt. In terms of how technology has played a role, though, I think one of the exciting things that we've seen is that the world very much has become a flatter place almost than it has ever before. And the use of video conferencing and similar facilities like this event has very much meant that we can work across boundaries and time zones more fluidly and more flexibly than I can remember. So technology is helping us in the current period. I've been on projects very recently where we've had the team working across 13 time zones from Boston, Massachusetts, right the way through to Tokyo, with Singapore and the UK involved as well. And that project worked just like we were all in the same office. This screenshot here actually shows an example of where 150 of my colleagues from the Seattle and San Francisco offices all met to try and sing happy birthday to one of our colleagues over Zoom. So you can see that technology is helping us to carry on even if 150 people singing happy birthday is not that pretty. So then moving on, thinking about AI, it's worth recognizing that in 2020, this year is the 65th year that we've been talking about AI, since these first coiners of the term used it right back in 1955. Now, this definition for me is still pretty much the best one I know of, where what we're trying to do with AI is allow machines to behave in a way which would be called intelligent if a human did it. I haven't seen a better way of encapsulating the objective and the heart of AI all these years later. And then finally, of course, we are 1 year further on into the current AI renaissance. So much has happened recently, and things continue to move at quite a frantic pace. And for some of our customers, we offer an AI Tech Watch service in which we do continual screening and scouting of what are the emerging trends and exciting themes in the world of AI. And I thought for us today, I'll just pull out a few. And two of them are quite high impact, and one of them I think is a sign of things to come. So the first one is around the area of AI growing up. And we've seen a huge amount of work over the last certainly 12 months, maybe 2 years, in the area of the engineering practice of artificial intelligence. The topic of ML ops, that is machine learning operations, has really come to the fore recently. And a lot of thought and a lot of work by many teams has been going into how to develop those practices and processes to allow us to get machine learning and AI into service and starting to deliver value. So that's been a big theme. The other one is probably the major capability announcement of the year, which was in the area of learning language more like humans do. And this is around the OpenAI's GPT-3 model, which many of us may be familiar with. So this is one of the largest, in fact, it is the largest machine learning language model released to date, 10 times larger than the previous examples. And this really surfaced some quite impressive capabilities for a language model, where it was able to do language-to-language translation. It was able to start generating content, which in some areas was difficult for humans to tell the difference between AI and human-generated content. It was able to correct the grammar in English text. And it was even able to learn 3-digit arithmetic purely by looking at the word association. So quite incredible step forward in language learning capability. The last one I mentioned then is looking slightly further forward, and this is in the context of AI making AI. So this is drawing on some of the research recently published by the Google Brain team, looking at AutoML, they called AutoML 0. And this is around moving the area of getting algorithms to create new algorithms by doing so with some of the fundamental building blocks of maths, going right down to some really simple pieces and allowing AI to construct some quite sophisticated algorithms using only those basic maths building blocks. So I think AutoML is a thing for the future. It is definitely moving fast, and I think it'll be here with us for some time. And it's certainly a topic that we're going to be keeping a close eye on. If you'd like to know more about this, we've published a white paper on the AI Renaissance, thinking about where we've come from and why it's taking off and where it's going. And you can get a copy of that from our friendly team on our Cambridge Consultants exhibition booth. So do go and have a talk to them. So that's some background of where we are. But I think one of the things I wanted to talk about this morning is the question of how do we scale up AI? As we met together last year, a lot of the discussion was around proofs of concept. How do we get past proof of concept? How do we get through into value for our work? And I think the question of how do we scale up the AI is very much the question that we need to deal with this year. So here's some recent research, which gives me great cause for enthusiasm and optimism. This is from Capgemini, and this was published just this year, which shows that we are seeing many organizations starting to push their AI innovations through into service and delivering value. So this research shows that 11% of those organizations are seeing AI in production in multiple areas and pushing significant business value. And it shows a further 41% of organizations are on the beginning of that journey. They're seeing AI in production on a limited scale, but they are getting it there. And so that shows that over half of the organizations in this survey are getting AI into production, which I think is a great step forward for us on where we were last year. I do have an observation, though, on the sources of innovation which are being pushed into production. And I believe that many of those great products and services getting into service are largely based on third-party innovation. They're organizations that have brought in AI expertise and products from outside, and they're scaling those up to value, which is fantastic. I think one of the opportunities that we're presented with now, though, is as AI becomes democratized, as teams are getting more to grips with what you can do and how you get it to work in the real world, there is now the opportunity for organizations to increasingly use original innovation developed in-house to give them unique value. So I think that's quite an exciting time for us to be at now. In that context, then, for me, there are these three areas that we should be thinking of. As business leaders, we're thinking about how do we develop that original innovation in AI. And there are these three. Firstly, building firm foundations. How do we get the basics right? The infrastructure, tools, and team. Secondly, a mindset of delivering increments. So an idea of pushing for minimum viable intelligence and incrementing from there. And lastly, an area I think is often overlooked, which is the topic of continuous invention. AI continues to move fast, and to keep investing in research, I think, is critical to continue improving the performance of our systems we're building. So each of these is probably a presentation in itself, but I'll share a few quick thoughts on them. First of all, firm foundations. So all of your work in AI is very much about the team that you put together and the tools that you give them. So firstly, the team. So I think critically, the team we're discovering is more than one team. It is multiple teams. So the data scientists at the center, developing algorithms, but then working with the data engineering team to be able to format the data and get it in the right arrangements for your algorithms to work on. But also then machine learning engineers who have to take their implementation and put it often into embedded AI at the edge in product or running at high velocity in the cloud. Secondly, then the infrastructure. So we run this supercompute on site in our offices in Cambridge, and that really allows our team to do two things. It means that they can get really rapid turnarounds and exploring many different options and permutations in the models they're building. But it also allows us to get right up close with what does it really take to build this infrastructure to run these experiments. Finally, then, the tools that you give them. And this is definitely an area which is fast moving. New tools are emerging all the time. And it's something which is worth some thought, because choosing a particular tool set is not always easy to switch afterwards. But the capability which these allow your teams to have is continuing to evolve. And the combination of these tools, this infrastructure, and the team is very much the foundation you build your innovations on. Then thinking about that continuous delivery mindset, and I see very much the idea of minimum viable intelligence as this iterative approach of setting an ambition, proving that concept with the data and the data science that you have available, building the first version of that, and then launching it into the market. And the key thing about that is it allows you to iterate around this cycle, get your service into market, and then crucially collect more data, which would allow you to get around the next iteration with improved performance for your models. The last thing that I want to talk about is this idea of continuous invention. How do we add research into this cycle so that each time we iterate around, we can actually do more with the data that we've got? And I want to share a few examples of the kind of research that we've been doing at Cambridge Consultants to give our clients the edge as they're trying to do this. So firstly, here's an example of some work we're doing in the area of autonomous driving and autonomous platforms. And this is about pushing the economics of AI to allow scale up. So one of the best quantities for autonomous platforms to make decisions on is high resolution depth sensing, as you would get from a relatively high cost LiDAR system. But what we've tried to do here is say, can we develop a system which gives you the same information by using a camera and low resolution depth, so as you might get from a radar. And we've built a model here which essentially does just that. It fuses that high resolution image with low resolution depth, and then that gives you a high resolution depth output, allowing the AI to make decisions using sensors which are a fraction of the cost. The next example I wanted to talk about was the area I'm particularly excited about, which is what I refer to as teaching AI to have a sense of intuition. And that's critical where they have to deal with some tasks which have vast numbers of options. So as a bit of background, there are 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the visible universe. But as a human, we deal with games of chess on a regular basis. So there are 10 to 120 numbers of games of chess. Equally, for the average Amazon delivery driver doing 200 stops a day, they have to deal with a problem which is 10 to the power of 375 numbers of options. And then we've seen AI dealing with games like Go, one of the most complex games in the world, and winning against the world champion. And there are 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 48 possible games of Go to deal with. So as I've mentioned, these kind of problems are things that as humans, we learn to solve with a sense of intuition. We learn through experience what options work and what options don't, and which routes we should choose to get us most quickly to our answer without having to consider everything. And we've been thinking about how do you teach AI to do the same thing? So this is a shot of one of our agents solving the problem of building a bridge. And here it's thinking about where to place the blocks. And it's been through a training process where it had to learn what is a bridge, how do they work, how do they feature when you have to build in a physics model with friction and gravity, and what does it need to do to place the blocks to be able to build a successful bridge. And even building a bridge that simple has many, many options. So for that size bridge, there are 10 to the power of 14 options that it needed to consider. But because we trained it, it had developed a sense of intuition and experience. And so it only had to consider and compute 480 different options. And so you can see taking this kind of approach means that this model was 10 to the power of 11 times more efficient than brute force. And so this is an example of the kind of research where you can start scaling AI in real world complex problems, which otherwise we haven't been able to do. So my view on how we scale innovation in AI is around building firm foundations. It's about that mindset of continuous increments and continuous delivery, minimum viable intelligence, and also being able to have a process of continuous invention so that you will continue to add the latest research to get the highest performance out of your models. So with that, I think I wanted to just draw the threads together then as we open the conference. So I'd love us to be discussing amongst ourselves with the speakers and with each other, how do we work together to scale original innovation in AI? Let's share amongst ourselves, what are we doing to push AI innovations into scale? What are the learnings we've each had from our experience of doing that? And also, what are our experiences of developing that original innovation, taking our own teams and creating unique and new capabilities in AI? I hope we have a great conference all today. It's my pleasure to open the event, and I hope you all have a great event over the next 2 days. Thank you.